Yo, what's up?
What's going on?
Not much. All right, what's up? I heard a rumor you have a contention.
Yeah, so I've heard you say, like, just real quick, something about like the landlord class, and I wanted to like hear what your gripe is because I don't see it as like much of a class in my personal experience.
Well, it's not a class in the economic class. It's a class in the sociological sense. It's a class in the sense that there is a distinct group of people who wield a significant amount of power in our society by way of their pretty much near exclusive ownership and rentiering of a commodity that everyone needs to live. And a lot of the antagonism directed against it is because landlords, being a landlord, it's not a job. You don't actually provide any useful labor to society. You just kind of leech off of. You just kind of leech off of the people underneath you. That's the main contention
I
here.
would have to disagree there. I mean, it takes a lot to especially start up being a landlord. I mean, the amount of self studying on like what's a good loan to get, what's a good property to buy, how to manage all everything that has to do with being a landlord. There's a lot of risk involved
But
with that. It's not
that's not work though. That's not societally useful labor. That's just investment. That's
well,
like
it is in the sense that the landlord has to take the risk on taking the loan if you're starting out not being rich, and he's basically taking all the risk while the renter is basically just pay to live there, but the landlord's the one that has to end up dealing with
if
everything that has
you
to
if
do with
you
running the building.
risk isn't work, and if you have enough money to become a landlord, it's a pretty safe investment. There are some exceptions to that, but there are going to be risks involved in any investment. But that again, that doesn't make it like work, you know? Like
I
you're
just
not
don't see
producing
how it's
anything.
yeah, I mean, you're essentially taking your money or a loan in most people's cases to build up, principal in the building so that, whoever wants to live there can live there. I mean, nobody else owns the building. It's just a landlord. So, I mean, you're taking on, uh, you know, all sorts of risks to be a landlord.
Yeah, you're taking on risks, so don't. So you shouldn't have to. There should be no landlords. Yeah, I will free you of that risk. Do not worry, comrade. I want to alleviate you of this burden, because it seems like you take a risk, and then most of the time you get to make a lot of money while providing no societally useful labor.
Okay, if you're starting as a landlord in like California and you have a bunch of money, I get it. That's like a totally different thing. But like if you're out in the Midwest, like me, for example, and you're trying to buy like a duplex or a triplex, if you've done all the math on like what would be a good property, you're only making like 200-300 bucks in actual profit after all expenses, the mortgage is paid monthly. It's really not that
Yeah, but a
much.
person who buys a house for personal use has to go through all that labor too. They just don't get to make money off of it. Like all the risk you're
What
describing
if they
is the same
sell it?
risk that a regular homeowner would engage in when they buy a house.
Um, I mean,
Except you get to make money off of it.
Yeah, in a sense, you're right because the people that are renting from you are essentially paying part of your mortgage. But I don't see it's kind of like I don't see it as like the landlord has all this power over the renters. It
Well, wait,
just doesn't come off to me.
we've switched arguments now. So my initial argument was that landlords provide no societally useful labor, which is the case. Now, property managers do work, they upkeeping houses and stuff, but that's a different job. Some landlords are also property managers, but frankly, most landlords will call like a plumber once every 6 months, and that's the extent to which they meaningfully put
Well,
in work. Then
they
they'll
a
hire a
lot of them
cleaning
do
team
it
between
themselves.
tenants. Sure, some of them, but that's a separate job. That's not the landlord. I don't have a problem with somebody coming in and being a property manager. That's fine. That's great labor. That's useful. But a landlord, just the process of investing in a house and making money off it, I disagree with that. If we're moving off of that point and we're moving to the point like you don't think that landlords have like a ton of power, the counter answer there would be they do. Like they just do.
I
Like
mean, can I just point out one thing? If a renter doesn't pay rent for that month, the landlord ends up paying for that person's living expenses, and it's a loss immediately. It's the renters have power too. There, they can just not pay, and next thing you know, the landlord's going under, and he has to pay. And usually, they have a day job as well. I don't see it as like this thing where like the landlord is really a lording over them, you
Well,
know?
they are. I mean, for so many reasons. For one, like in most places, you have to go through a landlord to rent a house. Most people can't just buy a house when they go out to college or whatever. You have to rent. That means that your livelihood, your living, is entirely predicated on the rules and standards set by a person who controls the house that you live in. Any damage that you do to that property, any perceived wrong that they engage in, any rules they set for you, any personal dislike between you and them, the potential they have to raise prices in the future, the extent to which they are capable of making your life a living hell. Trust me, if you've ever rented out for long enough, you've had a landlord who has made one's life a living hell. This is a huge amount of power to
I
have over an
know.
average person.
I
And I
agree.
don't think it makes the power relation equal, because you can like not pay and then work to the process of getting evicted and then not be able to use this like renting as like a reference for the next place you rent, you know? There are reasons why you can't just get away with not paying your rent as a tenant as well.
Yeah, but the tenant always has, I mean, yeah, there's leases and stuff like that, but you know, the landlord can't just walk away unless he's able to sell the property. I mean, he is tied to that property. The renter is not so much.
But so is a homeowner. Again, like I don't have a problem with homeowning and I don't have a problem with property management. I have a problem with landlords.
I mean, are you trying to say like the landlord is like somehow exploiting them? Because I honestly see
Yes.
this as like the landlord is absorbing a lot of the financial burden for somebody else to live there.
Well, no, because there should not be a reason for everyone to just buy a house to begin with. Like you can just like rent it. It should be decommodified, or you should be able to rent it from the government. The commodification of housing has been the consequences of the commodification of housing has been a disaster to the human race. Like, let me give you an example. You're talking to me right now on a phone or on a computer.
Computer,
Okay. Is it a laptop or a desktop?
desktop.
Okay, let's say we live in a world where that desktop either A, costs 20 times as much as it does right now, or B, you can never actually own it. You can only get it from a rentier who will sell it to you for like 1/4 of its value cost per month. And you have to live your entire life using that service at the behest of someone else. Any damage done to the computer, any weird programs you install, any fucky viruses that you accidentally bundle your way into, all of these are a consequence for you, not only because the computer is harmed, but because then you have to deal with the computer's owner. And that is your only option. Your only
You have
option
a
to have a
choice.
computer.
You don't have to rent.
Wait,
You
what can
can.
you do? Wait, what's the alternative between renting and owning a house?
No, I'm saying the alternative to being a renter is to buy a property.
Right, so that's what I was
If
saying. So the
you,
only
I
way out of
know
this
your
exploitative
worldview.
system is to have
Yeah.
an enormous amount of money that most people don't have access to.
Now, I agree. The prices of just real estate today is absolutely insane, and it's just going to keep going up. I mean, I agree with you. It's crazy.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's my contention. Unless you have the money to buy a house, which most people don't, and that's a huge fucking investment for the average person, you have no choice but to deal with renting. And renting is fundamentally exploitative because the landlord provides no essential labor to the maintenance of the property, or very, very little, but the renter still has to pay an enormous amount of money to them. Many landlords don't have a job outside of just owning property, in which case you are not the one relying on the landlord to have your house. They're relying on you to pay their mortgage.
Now,
It's a
most landlords have a job outside of landlording unless they're really rich.
Well, it
I'm
depends on
t-
how many properties they own, right? But there are property companies that own thousands of houses in like a given city.
yeah, I mean, sure. I'm just talking about from somebody who isn't rich. From that's my point.
Well, yeah,
We
sure,
get.
but they still provide no essential labor. Like, why couldn't I just have that house, or I could just rent that house from the government, or there could be a housing co-op, for example, or I could
Well,
just, or I could just have the house, but I could pay taxes on it. Like, there could be heavier housing taxes, but nobody's expected to pay rent. There are a lot of ways to solve like the landlord problem, but the system we have right now is like really one-sided.
well, the whole system is basically what created this. I mean, somebody built it, got paid to do it. Then somebody bought it from the people that you know built the thing. So it's just kind of like this money is just going down the line. That's how real estate works. Like
Yeah,
I
but
don't know
I
how
don't like
else.
how real estate works. I mean, I don't like
I don't really either.
Yeah, well, I mean, then there you go, right? The difference is like ultimately the problem is I don't think that land or houses should be used as an investment because if you invest in stocks, whatever, stocks are imaginary. You can make as many stocks as you want. You're investing in the confidence that the general market has in a given firm. I think that's acceptable. I don't think there's a problem with that necessarily. But with land and houses, these are real physical things that exist in the real world that every human being needs to be a part of. And as a practical consequence of our commodification of housing and our subsequent use of the rentier system, most people have no choice but to rent in order to survive. We don't do this with any other necessary component of living. We don't do this with food. We don't do this with water. We don't do this with most commodities. One of the funny things is lately, John Deere, the tractor company, has been doing this right to repair bullshit with their tractors that they give out to farmers. Hey, you don't actually own that tractor. We own it. You just get to rent it, and you don't get to damage it or make any modifications to it because that's ours. And people have been freaking the fuck out over it. And rightly so. But that's what we do with houses. So, you know?
So basically, your problem is just against rent, that whole concept.
I don't like the idea of people profiting off of doing no labor, especially when those profits are extracted from people who will typically have less money than them.
I mean, I disagree with you that they don't do any labor. I mean, you said it yourself, they have to maintain everything.
Well, they don't, though. They can hire a property manager. But if they are acting as a property manager, that I would consider to be societally useful labor. I would consider that valuable.
But they're paying the property manager. So, I mean, the
sure,
money
so
is
that's
just a transfer of.
Well, yeah, but do property managers get paid the total value of the rent? Like, would I pay a property manager $2,000 a month so they could come into my house once a week and make sure the dishwasher is working? Like, no. It's a huge amount of wealth being expropriated for essentially no labor. Landlords don't provide labor. They don't work for their income. They make it off of other people's work. They make it off the rentiers who get their money from working like real jobs.
No, I can see your point, but I mean, honestly, for the majority of landlords, I mean, we're only making like $200-300 in actual profit.
Oh, I don't think you should make any, because it's not. I mean, well, wait, hold on, hold on. Average U.S. mortgage. The
I'm
median.
talking about like duplexes or triplexes.
Yeah. So I can't believe it's that slim because the median monthly mortgage payment for U.S. homeowners, so this isn't apartments or anything, is $1,100. But I'd be willing to bet the average like rent price for a comparable sized like house would probably be significantly larger than that. So I don't know. Even if that is the case, though, like I would disagree with the system of exploitation on your end too. I think it's pretty fucked up that if you want to own a house, you have to drop like half of a lifetime's amount of money. I think that's pretty fucking weird. I don't know if that's necessary.
Well, yeah, I mean, the prices of real estate today compared to like the 60s or 70s is crazy. I mean, today, I mean, it is late stage capitalism, so to speak. But I mean, I'm losing my train of thought here, but I just don't see it being that much of like exploiting the.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I've made my arguments. I have to go soon, but the two things that I would say is this, I guess, at the end. It seems like everyone needs a house. I mean, you can be homeless if you want, but everyone needs a house. And as it stands, there are a lot of risks and like burdens associated with buying a property that I don't think everyone should be able to front. I think that's like a lot to expect of the average person. So my argument would be we can do one of two things. We either decommodify housing entirely, making sure that all houses, all land is owned broadly by the government, at least in a residential sense, and then from there you don't even pay rent, you just pay like a given like value tax on your property that everyone contributes to, sort of proportional to the expected value of their house. I feel like that would be decent because the government has a financial incentive to make sure people have places to live near centers of work because that bolsters the economy, which helps out with other things, or housing co-ops, where like rather than letting housing companies build up the properties and then they get like sold off to people who then rent them to others, you sell them off to a big like neighborhood conglomerate of workers who collectively own and manage these big housing co-op properties, and people then work there and they would rent it out for like a pittance because the amount of labor going into their upkeep is fairly minimal. Those would be like two suggestions on my part. I just don't like the system the way it is now. It seems like it's really unsustainable, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what you meant. So now I know what you mean. So I wasn't here to like take you down. So
No, of course. And I want to clarify, by the way, I'm not like a lot of lefties. I don't think all landlords are bad people. I think that's like a really weird, reductive, like essentialist way of looking at like economic relationships. I just think that it's a fundamentally toxic type of economic transaction, and it seems like there's no way out on any end. There have to be people to buy those houses to rent them right now. Otherwise, you would have to buy them yourself, which most people can't do. And you have to rent from them or you live on the streets. So right now it feels like nobody has any choices. I just want to introduce that choice, you know?
No, I get it. There's basically only two choices. I get it.
Yeah. Anyway, I really appreciate you coming on to talk with me. Housing decommodification is something that I'm really passionate about. I know it's going to have to be done like really transitionally, but hopefully it's something we can work towards. And maybe we don't get rid of commodified housing like entirely, but at least we open up these co-op housing segments so poorer people can live there more comfortably without like hardcore killing their bank account, you know?
Yeah, I got you. All right, Bosh. Good talk, man.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. I actually like enjoyed speaking to you. I was dealing with Nazi bullshit earlier, so this feels really good. Okay.
All right.
Okay, that was a lot more positive than I expected. Yeah. Can you explain decommodification in detail? Yeah, okay. The actual process of decommodification of housing is going to be an incredible, if we ever do it, you know, God willing, is going to be like an insanely incremental process. Like, it would be like we would have to do like, this is one of the reasons why I really, really value state government, okay? We should get like governors and like state senators and stuff. This is very, very valuable because if we can try out like little bubbles of this, like, hey, maybe Austin has this district and this district. We're going to try housing co-ops here. Maybe a property company is going to build houses in this and this and this neighborhood, and then we're going to, you know, delegate this to sort of a housing co-op. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we try decommodifying this section. The government will buy out all of these property owners if they're having trouble selling like their houses, and then they'll assume that property and try that. Is this just public housing? It would be public housing, yeah, but it would be done, I think, a little bit more differently, because we typically associate public housing with very cheap, very poor, like the government does this just to keep people off the streets kind of stuff. Whereas I'm talking about, this would be like fairly regular housing. How would quality of housing be split up? In all likelihood, if we do a transitional decommodification, at first it's going to be lower and middle class housing that's going to be decommodified. Upper class housing, like rich fucking apartments in Los Angeles or Seattle, are probably going to stay privately owned for a very long time. And in fact, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Everyone can live a decent, fine life in a middle class home. If you're in a market economy, if you have a fuck ton of money and you want to live in some $4,000 a month like penthouse like apartment or something like that, I think that's okay. In a market, in a capitalist economy. Now, obviously, if we move from there, we'll change that too. But do landlords not help the rentier in that they A, provide a house that under normal circumstance the renter would not be able to buy, and B, they allow the renter to change their place of residence easier than if they own their house? No, creator phase, that's what I mean. That's the problem with this system. Right now, we have no choice but to rely on landlords. We have to, because if we don't, everyone would have to buy a house in order for them to live anywhere. That'd be insane, you know? So like in our current system where there are no alternatives, we do need the landlord. But my argument would be that the landlord doesn't provide anything to society, so we should reshuffle our priorities in such a way that, we don't need them, we don't rely on them. Okay.